they did that exercise, they would see very clearly that they're better not going down that road. All right, you mentioned Brandon Aiyuk. Let's talk about Brandon Aiyuk. It seemed that Lynch indicated that the Niners are going to pick up the 5th-year option on Aiyuk. That would be $14.1 million for 2024. This year, he's only going to cost $3.9 million against the cap. But the 49ers had until May to make the decision on the 5th-year option, and they're going to pick it up. Now, while that's going on, ESPN's Nick Wagner, who covers the Niners, reported that the 49ers have gotten trade interest in Aiyuk from teams hoping they can trade for him. And Wagner has stated the 49ers have no intention of moving on from Aiyuk. So isn't it interesting when it comes time to talk about Trey, they can't speak with any certainty. He's just on our team right now. But when it's time for Aiyuk and you see trade rumors, it's like immediately we have no intention on moving on from Aiyuk. So they can be decisive and verbally commit to a player when they want to. And it appears in this situation they're committing to Aiyuk. And you know what? This one makes sense. Stay with Aiyuk. Aiyuk is a big time player. I mean, there's just no question about it. He's just turned 25. He's coming off a 1,000-yard year. He played with 3 different quarterbacks. He loved working with Purdy at the end of the year. I think Aiyuk is going to take off in the next 3 to 5 years. And I understand why other teams want him, because look at the receivers in the draft. Aiyuk would be the number 1 receiver in this draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He would be a star. And not just in the draft. If you put Brandon Aiyuk on a pass-heavy team, like let's say the Chiefs, the Bills, somebody like that, this man would at least have 1,500 yards. He tweeted the other day, we talked about it last week, where he said, I had 1,000 yards as the 4th option on the 49ers. Obviously, you have Debo, you have CMC, you have Kittle, and then you have Aiyuk. You got 1,000 yards on a run-heavy team. That's very impressive. So I'm sure teams are knocking down John Lynch's phone lines to say, can we get Brandon Aiyuk? Like, as they should. If I'm another GM on any other team, I would definitely be calling about Brandon Aiyuk. So it doesn't surprise me that teams are looking in to trade for him. I do like the fact that the 49ers already, like you said, shut it down, says, no, we're not interested in trading him. But it shows you the polar contrast in the fact of, okay, here's Trey Lance. We're not saying we're not trading him. We're just saying that we like him right now, like we said earlier. And then you got Brandon Aiyuk. No, we're keeping him. But the 5th-year option is very interesting because that gives you basically 2 years to figure out and negotiate. Brandon Aiyuk knows this. He knows he's going to go out there this year and go crazy. If he has a bigger season this year, his value goes sky high. So then it tells me next year, okay, he's going to be on his 5th-year option next year playing for $14 million. It's going to leave him with a big question of, can they afford both Debo and Brandon Aiyuk, even though they're not going to trade him right now? Would they consider trading him next year? It really depends on who has the bigger season this year. I think, if Debo has like a resurgence this year and he goes crazy, it might make them think that, okay, Debo can be traded. Or on the other hand is if Brandon Aiyuk has a big season, maybe they're like, okay, Debo is expendable. Look at what this guy can do on our team. Let's make him the franchise receiver. So it's going to get a little interesting next year. I don't think that anything's going to materialize this year, but something to keep an eye on, because this year they had, Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey, 2 tackles that were supposed to be paid very highly. Of course, they could pay Trent Williams. They couldn't pay Mike McGlinchey, so you let him walk. I feel like maybe next year we're going to hear a lot of trade talks with the 49ers wide receivers, because I don't know if they're going to be able to pay both Debo and Brandon Aiyuk. So something to keep an eye on, but it is nice to know that they're going to pick up that 5th-year option, give them an extra year to figure this out. Maybe they can do cap space gymnastics like they always do, move some contracts around, backload some deals here and there, because this year their first priority is making sure they get Nick Bosa back and extend him. And then next year we'll worry about that. But, giving Brandon Aiyuk that extension at least gives you some type of assurance knowing that you got an extra year to kind of figure out what you're going to do with them. But, I mean, if I'm a GM on another team, I definitely want Brandon Aiyuk. The guy's a star.
If John Lynch said, because he does follow Raj, if he somehow dropped you a message and said, Raj, I'm going with your call. Do I move Aiyuk or move Debo? Whatever you say, I'll do. It's a lot of pressure.
If it's up to me, the pressure's on me.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on RSF 49ers.
If I had to, I'd keep them both. But if I can't, I think next year you move Debo because he's served you for several years. At that point, I don't know how many more years he's going to be able to sustain the physical play he does, and it's not a shot to Debo. I love him. I think he's the catalyst. If I say this year, I think you keep Debo and you can move Brandon Aiyuk because you're going to get more value out of him right now. He's, this high commodity. You can see the potential. So right now, you could probably get more out of Brandon Aiyuk in terms of value because you could probably get some first-round picks. Next year, coming to that decision, I'd probably trade Debo because now Brandon Aiyuk's going to be at his peak, and you can move Debo, whose contract will kind of be probably a cap issue at that point. So I think next year I would trade Debo, but that's tough, man. That's a very tough position. Again, you can make the same argument saying if you treat Brandon Aiyuk next year, you're going to get a lot more value. But I still think Debo would be very valuable for another team. But getting rid of him next year, I mean, because the way he plays, I don't know how many more years he could sustain it at that point. So get some value for a guy who may be breaking down at that point. That's an absolutely tough question. What do you think, Larry?
I agree with you. I would probably move Debo. But it's really tough because Debo is one of those players. He's a tone setter. And tone setting players are just, you don't get rid of them. It's hard to get tone setting players. But if you say to me, you can't have both, you have to make a move. My evaluation would be that Aiyuk has got potential to be better longer because of how he's built and how his body appears to be aging, as opposed to Debo, who's a little thicker. He's more explosive, but I think and Debo's also got I think probably a little bit more cachet around the NFL. So I think what you could get for Debo is probably higher than what you could get for Aiyuk. But I wouldn't want to trade either of them. I think in a lot of ways, the 49ers have a really, there's a lot of tough defenses out there, but there are very few tough offenses in the NFL. The 49ers have a tough offense. Nobody wants to go against Trent Williams. I watched J.P. Mason and run at the end of the year. Nobody wants to stand in front of that guy. Kittle is physical. The receivers run across the middle like they freaking own it. There's no Jawan Jennings has the courage of, 17 lions. You know what I mean? It's like the Niners they do not have a wimpy, soft offense. They've got a physical, we're setting the physical tone at the line of scrimmage kind of an offense. And now, and in a topic that I want to get to as well, they're getting a little bit more physical on the offensive line. So I think that it's going to be something to watch. Couple things before we let you go. This is a number of interesting things going today. The Niners signed Matt Pryor as an offensive lineman. What did you think of